Pimping is hard to do, you know? It's like you can't just let a bitch run around town, you know? You gotta collect the dough. You know, being a pimp is a lot like being a father or a daddy. Hello! Howdy! Big ups from SoCal. Oh, bless your heart. Hello! What up? It's like being a pimp's not easy. You know? It's like the more bitches you add on the block, the bigger the headache, but the bigger the paycheck. You know? It's like you can't just let them walk all over you, you know? You've got to make them afraid. And by afraid, I mean terrified. It's like being a pimp is a lot like being a parent, like a daddy, you know? It's like you have to treat them like they're children, that there are consequences to not following the rules, you know? Meow. I received my book. So awesome. That's awesome. Great news. Yeah, the people are loving the book, which I obviously love that. There's only a very small part of me that's ever like, I hope they like it. Because, you know, most of you have been along for the ride for long enough to know that, you know, the book is just a collection of the memes you already liked. So, I'm actually started working on the doll concept, by the way. That's really exciting. By doll, I mean a talking doll. I have looked at like Etsy. There's a couple people, one in Turkey, one in United Kingdom. The UK one, I think it's a chick who's might be too woke. But that said, if there's anyone who's into the craft world, who knows how to make sort of like a, not too cartoony, but a fun plush doll, I'd be willing to commission the work, because I know I don't have time, but I probably don't even have the patience to self-teach myself how to make a doll. I will handle the hardware and the recording, but I'm willing to pay someone to make a doll. So anyone out there, and again, don't approach me if you kind of dabbled in it and you're like, I could I need a good doll maker, like proficient, you know. Again, a doll maybe about a foot tall, but he's going to be, the Peterson doll is going to be cross-legged and with his hands at his lap. And he needs to have decent clothes, like his vests, you know, those like tweed vests and the tie. You know, he's got to look the way he usually looks, which is impeccable when it comes to the clothing and just completely distraught when it comes to his physiology. So yeah, I would want to add in, like, you know, the dark pits under his eyes and whatnot, the curly wild hair. I would say if he had a beard, it might be better. You know, beard, no beard. I think he's more, you can really know it's him, I think, with the beard, maybe. Again, the gray and the white, dark gray and the white going through the hair. I want some of the elements to be, the details to be pretty good. So, you know, and so I'm willing to pay for the things. So if I don't have to go through a stranger, well, like a real stranger, like across the world from Etsy, who I don't know who doesn't understand where I'm coming from and so forth. It would be great. So if you or your friends or anyone you know, this is a call out to anyone who knows how to make sort of like hand fabricated sort of dolls, plush dolls, something, definitely email me at madebyjimbob@gmail. Because the vision for this is obviously make a one-off and have it be hilarious. And then maybe auction it. Because I know someone will want to buy it, but I actually think multiple people will want it. And so if I'm starting with one, I would do Peterson. I would do a Ben Shapiro doll, which would be considerably smaller than the Jordan Peterson doll. And make them sort of like a collectible. I wouldn't mass produce them unless I got lawyered up and I knew I could do it and get away with it without being sued. I don't care to be sued. So at the low level of moving it, it would be like a one-off, maybe do up to 5 of them if people requested. But it's something that I know how to do. So I think it's time to make another physical version of a meme, which is a talking doll. Start with Peterson, do Ben Shapiro, put his little yarmulke on, his little unibrow. So again, if anyone knows anybody, if it's you or if it's someone you know, or you can put a call out to people who's willing to do a one of a kind plush doll, contact me at madebyjimbob@gmail.com. Josh Freeman message retracted. I don't know. Is that an accident or something? I have a question about the last frequency perception answer you gave. Frequency perception. Oh, is that like someone asked me about like if frequencies themselves could be like access to God or something like that? I think that's what you were asking. Oh, if heaven and hell doesn't have a physical aspect, how would one experience pain in hell or embraces? And we can't pretend to understand what it's like to be in hell or heaven without reducing it to our limited perception experience here in the world. So I think that's the point, is that, we can't actually comprehend the level of joy or in the limited ways we can, in our limited analogous format of language, I don't think we could actually do a one-to-one description of what it would be like to be united with the eternal. I mean, we could, in all fairness, we could only say united with the eternal if we're really being honest. We couldn't possibly accurately describe what that is without reducing it to the limited language that's given in the material sense. So in a way, the question's a good question, but the question itself actually answers the question, which is we couldn't possibly describe or understand or fathom the power of that. Ben Shrimperio. He could have different sets of yarmulkes. Yeah, definitely. An orange PragerU yarmulke. He's got the, maybe it comes with the, his personal invention. For those of you who like inventions and innovation in the free market and what it offers people, I have an invention. I put the patent on it, and it is essentially a yarmulke, a kippah or whatever you call it, that goes in your head, and it actually has a little bit of a mini or USB drive embedded in it, so it can power certain things. And the surface, the entire surface of the yarmulke is solar. And then, I don't say that solar is the near future, but it probably is the near distant future. And so I want to get on board in the ways that I can. And this assumes that, one shouldn't assume that I'm in the sun at all. I mean, I would never be in the sun. I would never dig a ditch. I would never pull carrots from the ground. That is why people, that is what money is for. You pay people to do that. But the thing is, there are people who are out and about who maybe do go on a hike or two, who do show their face to the sun, And for those people, I want to offer something exquisite, And so, I'm teaming up with Boll and Branch. They know some solar firms, and so forth. So we're moving ahead with that. And again, I have the patent. If you cross me and you try to challenge the patent or you try to, circumvent it, I will go after you. I will use all my power. And by power, I mean my bank and my legal expertise. And I will hit you everywhere. I will hit you from every angle, Yeah, Ben Shapiro, maybe do a team up with my man Hoodly Daddle to do a JLP, Jesse Lee Peterson doll would be hilarious. These are collectibles. I mean, they're going to be highly sought after. Why? Because they won't be mass produced. Two, having one in your house, like the fact that it's a one-off with hilarious, content, audio, and visual, and it sits, in your house. I mean, the Jordan Peterson one, the fact that it's going to be cross-legged means he can kind of sit on a shelf. It's like Elf on a Shelf, except it's Peterson. It's like Self on a Shelf, It's like, who wouldn't want their self on a shelf, if you could capture and freeze in time your best qualities, it'd be preferable to capture your best ones. But even some of the idiosyncrasies that you don't like that much that possibly embarrass you, there is a value to trying to freeze that. And who said, some people call it a photograph or a video. But I mean, if you can capture that in a doll and, and put the self on a shelf, that is a value, It's like the place where yourself meets all information which is represented in a book. And books, the home for a book is a shelf. It's the home for yourself, Should also make a whistle. What are those circus whistles? Would be drawstring? No, it's push button. Drawstring adds a mechanical margin of error. In other words, the more things you add to a process, the more breakable it is. The push buttons, I have one that's at least 5 years old now, and it still works. The string, it's going to break, then you got to bring it to a repair. It's just a headache. Push button, you just push his chest or his hand, Push my little hand. Push my little hand. See what I have to say. I will debate you. Just simply push my hand. Hold my little hand. I will tell you about capitalism if you just touch my little tiny hand. Maybe Shapiro's is his yarmulke. The button is on his head. It's a little awkward, though. You got to make it really functional. Squeeze my foot. Squeeze my hand. Squeeze my little belly. Obviously, it's his little belly. Rub my little tummy. Rub my little tummy, and I will say things. I will sit here with you while your family is sleeping, while you are bored, while you're wondering what you should do, what you should look up on the internet. If you want, before you go into a rabbit hole, here's the thing, gang. If you could have me on your lap at any given point in time, telling you facts and statistics, spouting out free capitalism at will, then, you should definitely invest in this puppet. This doll. Who wouldn't want it? Everyone would want it. I will buy at least 6 of the Shapiro dolls. Yeah, they're not going to be cheap, though. These are going to be nicely made, high quality, rare. Pushes Yamaka, yeah. Ayn Rand, definitely. I thought about that today. Probably not Michael Malice. He's just not important enough. Not that Ayn Rand's important. I mean, important in the way people put them on a pedestal. I should call them pedestal dolls. But Ayn Rand, definitely. Her little crooked teeth make her just janky as hell. Just hunched over. That would be hilarious. Yeah, her eyes, like, just, maybe she's the only one I use that has actual googly eyes that, like, you know, you shake her and her eyes just move around. You know. So yeah, I'm gonna get on that. I already have the hardware should arrive tomorrow. I'll work on the, you know, I got my Yeti microphone and I'll get to work on that. I just know also on Shopify, I just realized that there's an auction. So I'm going to definitely do the first one as an auction. I'll do a little promo for it, you know, have a little interaction with the doll on my Instagram if I still have one by then. And then start the bidding. Raggedy Iron, that's really good, dude. Raggedy Iron. Ben Shapiro comes wrapped in expensive sheets. Yeah, he would have he might actually just come with a desk. Like he's never separate from his little Daily Wire desk. Like he doesn't even have legs. It's just a torso and a desk. That way he can just lay flat on a table. He doesn't even need legs. I think that's the way to do Shapiro. Do Stephen Hawking. Hilarious. I mean, are you kidding me? I would have to do it. That one would be a little more expensive because it would have to actually come with a wheelchair. I couldn't possibly do it without the wheelchair. And so that brings up the question is whether that would be made out of the same material. Ideally, I know you can find little wheelchairs, little miniature ones, not for people, I don't think. But, you know, they're just like little cute novelties, I think. But if I can, it would just be done also in the fabric. Again, for those of you just tuning in, we're talking about a doll that I'm making. First, starting with, you know, Peterson. Self on a shelf. And I'm looking for someone to fabricate it. I'd rather not contact someone from Turkey, although I will if I have to. I'd rather work with someone directly from this community or adjacent to this community. So again, if you're interested, write me an email at madebyjimbob@gmail.com and put in the topic puppet, or not puppet, doll. And so I'm willing to hire someone to make this. And if you're good, there'll be subsequent people that I tackle. So ballpark price upward of 1,000. No, it'll start lower than that, but I believe that it could easily be auctioned up to that point where people want it. Which I don't disagree with, because again, it's like you have that thing and no one has it, and it's awesome, and it embodies all of the humor and laughter that we share over the last like 3 years of just, you know, ruthlessly making fun of that guy, you know, and it's likable. Again, I'm not going to like totally, you know, I'm learning to do impersonations and takes on people that expose something about them, but also make them somewhat likable in a way, while exposing the hateable part of them, if that makes sense. How many would you want to make? I would do one to start. Again, you start that way. You do one, you see what's possible. You do another. And again, I like my books, I want them limited and rare. I don't want to set up a big thing, because that's how you actually, if there is an issue with likeness or copyright, if you do it small scale and just move on to the next thing, that's the kind of creator I've always been. I don't really want to get into this mass production game, and then someone steps in. It's like, it's just a headache. I just want to make the thing that I have a good idea for, that makes me laugh, makes you guys laugh, put out a limited amount, and that's it. That's it. Which is hilarious, because combating like the world of how fast deep fakes and AI voices are getting and all this stuff, it's so funny to just go kind of backwards. You just go, oh, the future looks like this, I better get in the ground floor of it. Actually, no, you go backwards. As technology becomes ubiquitous and more people have access to it, what you do is you go backward in time and start to craft within the old trades. And those become the value, because the future has all of these technologies permitting anyone to do anything. In other words, it won't matter how good your Jordan Peterson impression is, because a computer can do it. And then it just comes down to writing. And then, it doesn't matter if you can impersonate visually or draw them, because cartooning and deep fake and movie making will be made easier. And the result will be, people will make some cool shit. But generally, the Pareto principle will kick in, and 80% of the people making stuff, aka YouTube, it's all shit. It just creates the illusion that anybody could make anything of value, or everybody, I should say. Anybody can make anything of value. Everybody doesn't. That's just the fact. So, that's kind of how I look at tech, where you're like, oh, this is happening. Then, as a creator, I don't know if some of you had this experience where you see something emerge and you almost become like a golem. You become protective, or you feel like insecure or threatened, and you're like, oh no, what does that mean about what I do? And then, but what I realize every time is exactly what I just said, which is, as that future emerges, as anything's possible, as you can be anyone in this world, if you pursue the opposite direction, that'll be the rarity. That'll be the rare thing that people actually want, because everything else will be just swarmed. You'll be swarmed with just what's equivalent to a bunch of pop-up ads that everybody creates themselves, just everywhere. On eBay, there's Barbie. Oh yeah, that's hilarious. I think the things they should say form nonsensical replies. Oh yeah, it'll just be a bunch of funny things. Like, it's not a interactive thing. Like, you ask it questions, obviously. That's getting into higher level tech that I don't really care about. But it's going to be funny. And it's going to be very, you're just going to want it. Especially the vision I have. I'll be pretty, not too rigorous, but like, I demand the thing looks nice, like good. It looks like well made, So, that takes a good builder and really a good clothing maker. Because in the end, the doll, the value of the doll beyond the voice and the funniness of it, obviously the likeness matters. Ben Shapiro's little downward unibrow thing, essential. Tiny little mouth, and his little hair is like a little straight, thick, cross the head hair, and his yarmulke. These are important, but the clothing is really important. That's actually if you really look at dolls, you look at ventriloquist dolls and such, you get impressed when you look at the detail, when you look at how well, like, you really treated their clothing not like it's a toy's clothing, but like it's a person's clothing that would be sold in a store just for a puppet. And that's where you get the real value. That's where it hits people, and they may not even know it. They're looking at it and they're like, what? So anyway, that's kind of what I'm on. That's my next kind of little project that I want to tackle. What was I talking about? I always end up talking about gravity, though. I did a couple of, it's fun posting on, that's one cool thing about YouTube, besides it totally sucking, is that you can do posts now, and there's actually like a way to interact with your community that isn't just the video based. And I've been taking like snapshots of like comments and stuff, and I get a lot of, oh man, if you go over to like, what is it, Professor Bob, the science guy or whatever, his little minions are so rabid. If you catch them on one thing, they just attack you. Like, they just can't deal with any straightforward interaction with what you're saying. They have to skip to all this other shit. Anyway, someone on one of my posts commented, we were talking about engineering, and they were like, dude, engineering accounts for gravity. Engineering accounts for gravity. How is it not? You're like, no, it doesn't. Engineering accounts for everything they say these equations account for. They account for an effect. In other words, the effect is something with mass falling or appearing to fall, or whatever, however you want to describe it. So they call that an acceleration. Now, a lot of people call gravity an acceleration, and a lot of people call gravity the force. And it can't be both the effect and the cause. And so when you determine what force is, let's say I step on a scale, force equals mass times acceleration. We could say the phenomenon is my body, its mass, is accelerating down onto the scale. The scale is designed to read what the force is, basically, in whatever metric it want. You can create a bunch of metrics, actually. But and so someone will say that's gravity. You're like, well, no, because that's the effect. So force equals ma can be determined once something's accelerating. So you determine the force of something, a baseball that's thrown, a bullet that's shot. You have the acceleration, you have the mass, and you can determine the force. So, but that doesn't tell us the initial accelerant, the initial thing that put it into play. And so to build a bridge, okay, this is how retarded these people are. To build a bridge, to build an airplane, to account in engineering, to account for what's observable about objects and them falling or not being able to fly, is how I like to put it, does not require to establish what causes that to occur. And they confuse these things. And there's a lady, I don't actually know her. Her name's Rachie, I think. But she was talking to this one dude named Fight the Flat Earth. I think he's like Australian or New Zealand dude. And she really got him in the corner. She was making the distinction that F equals ma is not the formula to prove or determine gravity with a falling object, because you're already determining force based on its accelerating. You're not determining what the thing is that's causing it to accelerate. You're determining the force once it's accelerating. This is what's confusing people. So to build a bridge or an airplane or a house and all of these things that they say, the engineers say they account for the equation, what they're doing is just redefining gravity as the effect. And so, yeah, of course, I wouldn't argue against that when you engineer, you have to account for the fact that things do fall, that they need to be held up. Basically, there are consequences. And so you can do that from trial and error too. Equations help describe and predict the future of what would happen given the observable phenomenon of things falling like they do. And so the point is, redefining the effect as gravity doesn't mean they're using gravity itself, which they claim is the force that creates that acceleration, that observable acceleration. Okay. They combine the two. So you simply ask them, Is gravity the force causing the acceleration, or is gravity the acceleration itself, the effect? You can't have something be the cause and the effect, okay? And this is where they all get hung up and they all go into circles and they start spiraling the moment you bring this up. Oh, you just don't understand engineering. Oh, you just don't understand gravity. And you just don't understand it. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, not understanding it doesn't mean it makes sense. That's actually an indicator. Yeah, you could say if he doesn't understand, he's too stupid. Or you could say if he doesn't understand it, maybe it doesn't actually, it doesn't make sense. And that's the problem. Engineering. You're going to really argue that gravity doesn't exist, and engineers, they do it and they use it for the bridge and stuff. No, they don't. They use the effect. You can account for in equations the effect, the predictable effect of things behaving a certain way. That's observable. That's different than accounting for through equations the cause. That would make no sense. Imagine building a bridge and being like, well, we have to account for the cause of the phenomenon that we're accounting for. It's like, what are you accounting for? Well, we have to account for the fact that things fall and there's a certain weight distribution required. There are actual laws to what we're doing that are observable and repeatable. And so, and they're done ad nauseum with trial and error. And you see, oh, that failed. What happens now? We have to do this. You don't do engineering by accounting for in your equations the thing that causes the thing you're accounting for. That makes no sense. You're like, sir, we're doing really well in this bridge design. It's going great. I'm so glad we accounted for the observable effect of how things behave in physics. And you're like, thanks. Yeah, we're doing good. But sir, I have a little bit of an issue though, and it's a little concern. Shouldn't we account for the thing also causing the phenomenon that we're accounting for in the engineering? Why? No, because we can't manipulate that. Oh, shouldn't we account for it? No, because you can't manipulate it. So gravity pushers should, at least, if they want to be honest, they should just say, no, certain things have a behavior that's falling, and certain things don't. And the best of our knowledge, that's just the law. We can account for the law and describe the law with equations. It can help us engineer and know predictable outcomes, but it's not required to know the cause of it in order to engineer. Dawkins doll, absolutely. Dawkins doll sold. Crank yankers? No, that's puppet. It won't be that cartoony. I want a little more realistic. I want the bags under the eyes of Peterson. I wanted to represent a little bit how I do my cartoons of them. Not my memes. My memes are a little more crude. The actual cartoons. Imagine making them into a Rock'em Sock'em set. No, it's too complicated. Then it made me thinking about engineering a little bit, that whole thing. And what I was thinking of is, let's see how I put this, because I didn't fully flesh it out, so I'm just going to kind of go riff, is that the integrity of, say, a bridge or a building is consistent with the kind of destruction that would occur if the integrity wasn't there. The two go hand in hand, right? So you're like, you got to build this strong, or, if this comes down, it's horrible, it'll be a disaster. It'll be, it'll be horrific. It'll be a nightmare. But then you start thinking about, well, that's based on the law of things that fall and crush other things. And and things of force that have impact on other objects. There's a destructive quality that requires the integrity to be there in the first place. So like, we need to build it strong or it doesn't fall down. Well, why? Because if it falls down, it can kill you, for one. You won't have a structure anymore, and you'll have wasted all of this time and effort using these sturdy materials. Well, and some of the new technology is pointing to this, is that if we look at buoyancy and forget justification for buoyancy, implying gravity, or I'm not getting into the physics right now. I'm talking about whether or not it's a possibility to build things less dense but more sturdy. And obviously there are people working on this stuff. That's what graphene is, actually. Graphene, light, carbon fiber, nanofibers, light, mushrooms even. So the question is whether you can make sustainable, sturdy structures that are actually not based on the laws of things falling and collapsing if their forces aren't distributed properly, but things that are actually buoyant in a way. Could you build structures that are actually near floating, but not exactly floating? Like not ascending, but not descending. And I think the future, and it might not be in our lifetime, is going to be architecture, homes, and such that are built still based on laws of physics, but not based on this concept that things are, we have to account for things falling, and we need to, if it's standing, that means it's accelerating down to the ground, and we have to build everything else off of it being connected to the ground. Well, what if there's like an equilibrium of just barely floating? Imagine a hot air balloon that's a giant house, but it's not going up. It's exactly steady where it is. That's it. You get into the required energy and whatnot. I understand that this isn't a practical idea. It's just an idea. But the concept is that what kind of integrity is required if everything is in between ascending and descending? So the laws of things falling would still apply inside the structure, within the structure, but not the structure itself. I don't know what that is, but it's certainly interesting to me. And then I started thinking about the concept, the current concept of gravity, that things are pulling toward the center of a ball. Well, not that we could ever do this, but the consequences of that would be if you drilled a hole directly under you, next to you, and you were able to drill a hole all the way through the said spherical Earth, and you got to the center and you kept going, you kept drilling to the other side in this model, and you get to the other side, and let's say that was drilled, and then you're like, okay, gave him the go. Based on the model, you'd be able to jump in the hole. You'd increase your speed. There would probably be terminal velocity. And then as you approach the center of mass, you would probably overshoot the center, right? And there would be, based on the model, you would actually just overshoot the center and suddenly reach a peak height, and you would be ascending. You'd be elevating. It'd be like being on a swing. That would be the consequences of the current concept of the Earth, which is like being on a swing, where you swing up and you reach your peak and then you come back down. So for some reason, that obviously it's at a scale I can't use my imagination to test, obviously, because that would be modern science, actually. So I don't want to do what they do. But if you imagine in your head, you jump in a hole, you fall all the way to the center, you overshoot the center, and then you're going up, actually. Like, technically, once you're past the center, you're going up. The direction changes. The concept of what physics is suddenly flips completely upside down to what it was just a second ago when you passed the center. For some reason, I don't know what the reasoning is. It could be, I'm not going to just, use the fact that I can't, that doesn't make sense to me, because again, it's at a scale none of us could demonstrate. Like, in other words, the question ends up being, and it's the same question I have for the mathematical explanation of things, which is not an explanation, by the way. It's a math is a description. But in the mathematical description of gravity and having to do related to mass and those being inseparable, at what size does an object gain the property or the characteristics of having things stick directly to it? Because this is a big problem, okay? That would be sorted out mathematically and predictably. So is the excuse always going to be, well, we don't have the ability to build something that big? Well, how could it be gradual? So the concept is, let's say you just build another mass object. You just keep building, and you're building over centuries, and you're just building. Now let's take their little funny spacecraft that they say they have, right? The ISS. Let's say you just keep building onto the ISS, and it gets so big that you can't even view it from the whole thing from sitting on it. At what point, at what mass, do you start sticking to it? Because the consequences of the current cosmology that's accepted is that there is a point at which suddenly, and I don't know, is it sudden? Is it gradual? Is it like, well, no, you build and build and build, and you'll eventually you'll have one, 2,000th of the Earth's gravity, and then you just, as it gets bigger, you'll eventually match it, right? And then but at what point do things stick, They don't know. Did you guys see the video? It's like a black dude in like a gaming chair. I posted one of his videos where he's laughing at the underwater astronaut. But the recent one is there's like a camera viewing on Mars on their little rover thing, and it pans to the left, and they accidentally see a fire. There's just a fire on Mars. Yeah, no big deal. And then I was thinking about this. We think about static electricity, things sticking to things. You rub a balloon, it sticks to your head. And how we experience things is if we drop a car out of a Hummer, or a Hummer out of a helicopter without the parachute, we're like, holy shit, that really is falling to the surface and crashing, and there's force and it's violent. But that's like at our scale, we're small. So it occurs as like this violent thing that's just, it's whoa. But then you zoom out and you kind of go, well, why is this assumption of things like falling, just because we can observe that directly, like right in front of us? Why do we assume that from a wider scale that it isn't just static? Why would you need a force to cling back to something that at a certain scale you never really separated from anyway. You know what I mean? Like static at that scale would be so powerful, but at our scale, we don't see it the same because it doesn't look or feel exactly like rubbing a balloon and sticking to our head. Or like, where else would an object go? You know, again, it goes back to that assumption that the question is always, yo, Jim Bob, well, why don't you, well, you need to answer why we don't just fly off into space. And you're like, based on what? Have you ever, can you show me something that flies off into space? No, because of gravity. Oh, so it's totally circular. So we don't fly off into space because gravity, but you can't ever prove that something would fly off to space because you can't remove gravity. Well, that's convenient. So you can't ever say what would happen. Yeah, but why aren't you flying off into space? Why are you assuming I should fly off into space? Because of the thing that I'm affirming, that I presuppose. Oh, okay. So you made up a consequence that you can't demonstrate for the absence of the thing that you're arguing for as an argument for that thing. You're making up a consequence for the absence of the thing you're arguing as an argument. Well, that would happen then. You would just fly off. I don't think so. At a super wide scale, nothing would be described as falling or at all. I mean, it would be like one object that has these tiny little particles to it that we call us, or a ball, or a car, or an airplane. I don't know. Anyway, I love the gravity talk, but again, what I'm very excited about is the doll. Again, if for those of you who missed the beginning, I want to make a doll, a talking doll. I'm going to start with Jordan Peterson, go into Ben Shapiro, going to Ayn Rand, definitely doing Stephen Hawking. I don't care about his family. You can't do that. Yeah, I can. So if anyone knows anyone who fabricates dolls, I'm talking about plush dolls, like consider a talking teddy bear, what that looks like. You can push it, you push the inside. So I have to be able to stuff the inside, you know. I have to be able to fit a small machine about, you know, this big into it, about the size of the bottom of a cup. So if you know anyone or you're that someone, write me an email at madebyjimbob@gmail.com and make the title doll or talking doll or something obvious. And I'm willing to commission your work. And again, I want good work. I don't want you to be like, oh, I'd love the opportunity to try to make a doll. No, I don't want someone to try to make a doll. Just so we're clear. Well, I would love to try to make a doll. That does fun. I mean, you know, he might pay me to make a doll. I want to try to make a doll. No, I need someone who's good at doing it. I need a technician who's good at doing that. So don't lie about your expertise. Okay? What are the alternatives of a theory of gravity to explain what causes stuff to go down? Well, I don't think there are any. But gravity is not a theory. So, you know, when you say alternative theory, I know you're using it probably colloquially, but it's not even a theory. But, I mean, some people go to just buoyancy density. But again, this is the problem I have in general, is that if F equals ma, mass times acceleration, and the argument is that gravity is a force that causes acceleration of objects, then you're stuck with the term force again, and then you need to justify that initial force with another mass and acceleration. In other words, it's endless regress, just like science. Science that determines cause and effect, if it's not law, it's endless regress. You know why? Because for every cause of motion, Something else is in motion causing the motion. So that's why gravity is so fun for the modern scientismos, is because they don't need to account for gravity, their force. They can just call it a force, or as they say, treat it like a force, but you can't treat it like a force because force equals ma. And the force of an object moving downward or across in any vector, to determine that force, you just need the mass and acceleration. You don't need the initial cause of the acceleration to determine the force. And so the problem ends up being endless regress, because if something's claimed to be a force, well, that's another thing in motion. But then that's how you show how circular gravity is, because you're like, well, what's the force? What's gravity the force? And then you're like, well, it's the mass. You're like, mass of what? Oh, it's caused by the mass. You know, why do things fall? Well, it's the force of gravity. Okay, what's the force of gravity caused by? Well, it's caused by the mass of the Earth. Okay, it causes the acceleration of the mass of the Earth. Well, gravity. Okay, so gravity, force equals mass times acceleration. If F is gravity and it's caused by mass, you're trying to tell me that the acceleration is also, again, caused by gravity? This is how circular it is. That's why it doesn't work in physics. The only reason make it work is because they constantly redefine the effect as the cause, constantly. Well, what is it? It's an acceleration. Oh, so the thing falling, what is that? What's the bowling ball falling at 9.8 meters per second? That's gravity. No, that's the effect. That's the acceleration of an object moving in a certain direction. See, the problem is, like, every time you determine what the thing is that's causing the thing, their secret sauce is that it's all encompassing. You can't remove it. And therefore, you can never isolate it as the independent variable and actually establish the scientific theory, which requires an experiment that allows you to introduce gravity and remove gravity. Introduce gravity and remove gravity. I mean, you can't even do it with the assumption that gravity is weaker in one place or another, because you can't remove it. It could never be the independent variable if it is, in fact, all-encompassing, ubiquitous in everywhere we look. Coward, cough, cough, cough. That's funny. Come on, coward. Anyway, that's all I got today. Could gravity be explained in the same way God is explained? Isn't it all circular? No, because circularity is permitted at the paradigm level. So God can be argued in a circular way because the transcendental argument. That's why the transcendental argument is so powerful, is because you appeal outside of the ability to even argue. You justify the ability to even have an argument or to have knowledge or the existence of any sort of discernment at all, the use of logic, all of these things. So you appeal outside of a system. And so it becomes circular in that sense. But maybe in a sense, no, because gravity still needs some sort of beginning. Again, you could argue maybe that all existence requires something to set it into motion, and that necessarily, logically, the thing to set it in motion must also exist outside of time, space, and matter, which is kind of like the cosmological argument, which isn't the best argument for any particular God, but it is a good argument to escape endless regress of what we call explanations of cause and effect, aka science. But everything, every time you determine what a cause is, you have to ask what caused that, and what caused that, and what caused that. And then, there's only two places you can go. Is that the universe is eternal, or that God, it's not eternal and it was created by an eternal being. And so the eternal universe is just as faithful as God. You're just removing a being and a mind, which is silly because if the universe is eternal, you still have to justify the existence of immaterial absolutes like laws of logic, meaning, language, the things of which you utilize to get to the truth of the material universe, which is backwards, because the material universe can't provide you with immaterial laws and concepts that you borrow to describe and get to the bottom of the truth of the matter. That's why materialism is so fucking retarded. Yeah, material explains everything. How about laws of logic? How about meaning? How about information? How about the consciousness? Oh, no, we just use those things to describe. Yeah, the material process can't justify the things you get to use to then make truth claims. I mean, shit, I gotta go. All right. Anyway, I'm excited about the thing. I hope someone knows a maker. I hope someone knows someone who could make this for me. Please let my email be filled with at least 5 people. All right, you guys. Have a good day.